The story is set in 1956, for years after the tragedy that occurred in Romania. It was when Sister Irene successfully banished the demon Pollock back to hell. On that night, in a church in Tarascon, France, a pastor and an altar boy named Jack were preparing for a mass about to begin. The pastor instructed Jack to prepare the red wine, as it was a requirement for the ceremony, as per Catholic belief that wine symbolized the blood of Jesus. After the mass, Jack returned to the storage room to store the leftover wine, but something strange happened. Jack felt like someone was watching him from the darkness, and suddenly, the wine in the glass container shattered. Terrified, Jack rushed to find the pastor and informed him of what had happened in the storage room. They heard a commotion there, and the pastor and Jack suspected someone had intruded into the church. From the darkness, they saw a pair of glowing eyes watching them, and suddenly, the pastor's body was lifted as if pulled by an invisible force. A horrifying event followed, as the pastor's body was engulfed in intense flames. The story then shifts to a convent where Sister Irene now resides and spends her life. In the convent, Sister Irene has a close friend, Sister Debra, a new character in the film. Sister Debra is known for being rebellious and hard to control among the other nuns. Among the nuns, only Irene is close to Sister Debra. Intense discussions take place from here, and we also get some insight into Irene's family background. Irene has a mother who loves her deeply. Elsewhere, we return to France and Maurice, who used to be a gardener in Romania. After his move to France, Maurice still enjoys gardening. In addition to that, he also works as a technician, fixing whatever he can. Now, Maurice works as a gardener at a dormitory. Before becoming a dormitory, this place used to be a monastery, converted into a dormitory. As we know, Maurice now has his own life. Maurice is close to a widow who is a dormitory teacher, Cave, and her daughter Sophie. Sophie seems to enjoy Maurice's company when he's around her mother. Next, we see a boy delivering fermented wine. After storing the wine on a storage shelf in one of the rooms, he hears what sounds like someone else in the room. Curious, he investigates the source of the sound. It turns out to be Maurice, but his behavior is strange. Maurice remains silent when the boy tries to call him, and he turns to look at him. Then, suddenly, the demon Pollock attacks him, and the boy meets a gruesome end. Back to Irene in her sleep, she sees Maurice asking for her help. She also notices that there is a cycle within his body. Irene realizes that this is a bad omen. The next morning, Irene is summoned by the bishop to meet with him. The Vatican bishop has intentionally come to meet Irene, as Irene suspected, and his visit brings news of a series of tragedies that have occurred to pastors and nuns, all ending in gruesome deaths. The latest attack was on the pastor in Tarascon, France. The pattern of all these tragedies revolves around Europe and traces back to the tragedy in Romania 4 years ago. The bishop explains that the demon Irene had previously sealed his return. He also informs Irene that Pastor Bruck has passed away, and now the only person who knows how to fight the demon Pollock is Irene. The clergy believes that Irene fought Pollock with a miracle, and now they need that miracle again to combat the demon. The bishop has great faith in Irene to investigate and find out the demon's purpose and what Pollock is seeking. In short, Irene sets off on her mission alone. However, on the train, Debra secretly sneaks in and decides to accompany Irene. Debra's reason for joining the mission is her curiosity about whether the miracle is real. She once heard a pastor say that red wine can become the blood of Christ, and she finds it hard to believe. Irene tells Debra that it's all about faith. If someone's faith is at the highest level, and they truly believe, then the wine can indeed become the blood of Christ. But not everyone can reach that level of faith. Despite being a nun, Debra still has something she can't fully believe in. Aaron hopes that during this mission, Debra can find her faith. Meanwhile, at Sophie's dormitory, she is constantly harassed by a group of mischievous children who like to play pranks on her. Sophie is forced to participate in one of their games, where she is taken to an unused chapel room. The chapel used to be a place for churchgoers to pray. Once inside, they play a game to summon a demon. Sophie is asked to look at a stained glass window with an image of a lamb. One of them tells her that if sunlight shines on the glass and hits the lamb's eye, she will see the appearance of a demon. Believing them, Sophie follows their instructions, and her eyes remain fixed on the window. They intentionally leave Sophie alone in the room. Soon, Sophie realizes that she's been trapped. She tries to open the door, but it's locked from the outside. Strangeness ensues when she sees what appears to be someone behind a tattered curtain. However, it turns out to be a statue. Eventually, Maurice hears Sophie's screams and unlocks the door for her. Sophie manages to escape, but she still looks terrified, and her gaze remains fixed on the room. Although briefly, Sophie saw a nun-like figure inside. The film then shifts to Aaron and Debra, who are now visiting the Tarascon church. There, Aaron meets one of the nuns and begins her investigation. She stands directly under the spot where Pastor Noirette was burned alive. Soon, a teenage boy approaches her. He is none other than Jack, the altar boy who witnessed the tragedy that night. He comes to give Aaron a necklace that belonged to Pastor Noirette, and the vision fades as Debra joins Aaron again. Back there, Aaron briefly sees a painting of Saint Lucy. Saint Lucy was once a saint, the protector of the blind. She was killed by misguided people who burned her, but her body wouldn't burn, and they took out her eyes before finally killing her. The conversation continues. According to information from the nun, during the tragedy that befell the pastor, there was another altar boy named Jack who witnessed the events that night. Besides Jack, there was someone else who used to live in that church but has since left. From the nun's information, the man was a traveler from Romania, and Aaron suspects he might be French. The nun doesn't know where Maurice is currently. Aaron is reminded of a past event when Frankie, or Maurice as he is now known, returned only to save himself. In the first Anan, we know that Aaron has the ability to see the supernatural, and she realizes that the demon Pollock has inserted a part of itself into Maurice's body. Although Pollock is still imprisoned in hell, a small part of Pollock resides within Maurice. In other words, Maurice is now a puppet controlled by Pollock's power. Pollock can manipulate Maurice to achieve its goals. That night, Aaron and Debra decide to stay at a hotel. Meanwhile, Debra handles their accommodation. Aaron leaves the hotel with an uneasy feeling. However, by chance, she sees Jack playing soccer with his friends. Aaron tries to ask him about the incident involving Pastor Noirette, but before they can talk, Jack goes back to playing with the others. When Aaron tries to follow Jack, strangely, the group of kids suddenly disappears. The atmosphere becomes eerily quiet, with no one around at all. Aaron briefly sees Jack running alone, and at a crossroads, she loses track of him again. Soon, something strange happens with a magazine rack on display. The magazines start flipping their pages, forming an image resembling a nun. The atmosphere becomes eerily quiet. Aaron looks around and, as she approaches the nun's room, Pollock suddenly appears and attacks her. For a moment, Aaron also sees someone wearing a hood, who turns out to be Saint Lucy. Aaron witnesses the tragedy that befell Saint Lucy when her eyes were gouged out. Aaron is also shown a nun who is a manifestation of the demon, carrying an ancient relic. Maurice, possessed by Pollock, launches another terrifying attack on one of the dormitory supervisors. Chaotic voices lead her into the chapel room. After investigating, she sees a small child under the control of the demon Pollock. Unfortunately, the elderly woman meets a gruesome end there. After waking up from her fainting spell caused by the visions and clues, Erin feels that the threat is getting closer. She also knows what Valak is looking for, an ancient relic that has not been found yet. This is also why Valak did not kill Maurice. Valak is using Maurice's body solely to search for the relic. Valak will exploit Maurice and control him once he finds what he's looking for. Debra suddenly remembers that last night she met Jack, who informed her that Erin had fainted. Jack gave her an envelope containing a cross necklace that belonged to Pastor Noiret. Erin becomes suspicious of the symbol on the necklace, as she has seen it before. Here, Erin's task is to find out the meaning of the symbol. Luckily, she has a friend who works in the Catholic archives in Paris. Without wasting any time, Erin and Debra head there. It turns out that Erin's friend knows about the symbol. It is a symbol of the St. Lucy family. Hearing this, Erin recalls her vision. Finally, Erin understands what the demon Valak is searching for: the eyes of St. Lucy. The story of St. Lucy's demise. The Sanusi family was hunted down. They fled and hid in various parts of the world. It turns out that St. Lucy's eyes were carried by descendants of St. Lucy herself, and they kept the existence of the eyes a secret. In theory, the reason Valak is searching for St. Lucy's eyes is because Valak used to be a part of the angels who defied God due to disobedience. That's the power the demon Valak lost, and by the will of God, that power was bestowed upon his holy ones. Here, we can understand that the demon is seeking St. Lucy's eyes to regain his power. And if the relic falls into the hands of the demon, it's unimaginable how powerful Valak will become. But if Erin manages to obtain it, the relic will become a powerful weapon for Erin to confront Valak. The problem is how Erin will find the whereabouts of the relic. From some records, the location of the ancient relic is archived. The relic was hidden by a monk named Radar John. He buried the relic in a St. Maria monastery, approximately an hour's journey from here. But the monastery has now been sold and turned into a winery. Meanwhile, the winery has also been converted into a dormitory, where Maurice, Shoppy, and Kat are. That same night, Erin headed straight to the dormitory, while Maurice was busy dancing with Shoppy and Kat. While enjoying the dance music, Maurice suddenly fell. Strangely, Maurice kept bowing, and on his shoulder, an inverted cross symbol was visible. Maurice saw the demon Valak manifesting in front of him, and Maurice couldn't believe that Valak was back. At the same time, Erin arrived with Debra. After a long time, Maurice and Erin finally met again. Maurice was unaware that the demon had been inside him all this time. Shortly after that, Maurice began acting strangely and left. From the moment Erin tried to chase the possessed Maurice, he easily overpowered Erin. Erin rose again and started reciting exorcism prayers. The prayers were able to restrain the demon, not missing the opportunity, and Debra struck Maurice until he passed out. Erin and Debra then tied up Maurice in a separate room. She then rejoined Shoppy along with Kat. Erin had to find the ancient relic before the demon did. The ancient relic was buried in a chapel room, and now the problem was that Erin didn't know its exact location. Shoppy, who was also searching, remembered the stained glass window. When the stained glass window was hit by light, it would reflect the light and point to a certain spot. Debra then went out with a flashlight to illuminate the window. And finally, Erin found where it was buried. On the other hand, Maurice appeared to have regained consciousness. Meanwhile, the dormitory residents, not far away, heard some commotion from above their rooms. Fortunately, they encountered Sister Debra there. She helped shine a light on all the room roofs, and it turned out the commotion was caused by the demon. Debra successfully avoided the demon's attacks and entered the dormitory room with the children. But it didn't end there. The demon with a goat's head continued to terrorize them. Returning to Erin, who was still with Kat, they were surprised by the arrival of a possessed Maurice. Maurice was hunting for the ancient relic now in Erin's possession. Erin briefly used the relic as a weapon against the demon, but unfortunately had to let it go. Meanwhile, Sophie took the relic, while Maurice was busy fighting Erin, and Shoppy was pursued by Maurice. Shoppy tried to escape and hide in a tower. Debra and the dormitory children were still hiding in a room. Several demons resembling deceased individuals pursued them one by one. Maurice continued to chase Shoppy to the tower. As Sophie was cornered, luckily the bell was disconnected and fell along with Maurice. But it wasn't over. Maurice returned. Shoppy kept resisting, kicking Maurice, causing him to fall again. Shortly after, Irene found Shoppy there. And finally, Irene got the relic back. When she returned to attack with the power contained in the relic, she could fight the demon inside Maurice. At the same time, Debra came to help, and they managed to incapacitate Maurice after the demon left his body. But it turned out to be a deception by the demon to confuse Irene. The demon successfully took the relic from Irene's hands. And the demon also gained power equivalent to that of an angel. At that moment, the demon Valak managed to emerge and reveal himself to them. Valak began attacking them one by one. Sophie tried to escape, but ended up trapped among stacks of wine barrels. Meanwhile, Irene was now facing the demon Valak directly, while the dormitory children were still trying to evade the attacks of the demon with the goat's head. Fire began to engulf Irene, and when Irene seemed helpless, she was briefly shown to her mother and the shadow of Saint Lucy. Irene seemed to receive a miraculous immunity to the fire that was burning her, just like Saint Lucy did in the past. At that moment, Irene managed to break free from the demon's grip. The room shook violently, and the wine barrels began to spill. Seeing the spilled wine, Irene immediately remembered the miracle where wine could turn into the blood of Christ. Irene then asked Debra to pray with her, while their hands were joined and touching the spilled wine. For a moment, we were also shown Irene's mother, and then Saint Lucy again. The image repeated, as if it were a sign that Irene was indeed a descendant of Saint Lucy. And the wine barrel exploded, drenching Valak's entire body. The miracle occurred once again, as the wine turned into the blood of Christ, destroying the demon Valak. Shortly after, Maurice regained consciousness and managed to survive and escape the impending doom. After overcoming the challenging obstacles, Maurice, Shoppy, and Kat finally reunited. Irene was happy to see their closeness. Although Irene had feelings for Maurice, it was all in the past. And finally, the Nun 2 movie came to an end. See you in the next video.